What is up, YouTube? Today I rented a 2021 BMW R9T. This is the option 719 trim or edition, whatever they call it. I don't know a ton about this bike, honestly, so I saw it online ready for rental, and I thought it would be a fun bike to test out and ride around today. We are taking this bike up on a big loop up through the Arizona mountains, and we're gonna have some fun here. Right now I'm starting in road mode. I want to kind of get used to the power and how it handles. Now I have a soft spot for BMW bikes. I rode the S1000R. It was the naked bike version of the S1000. I rode that back in like 2016 or 2017, and that was super fun. Had so much fun on that. I can feel already the bike has a good amount of power, and it's very peppy. It wants to just go. And it is a naked bike, so it's gonna be pretty windy up here. And yeah, the wind blast is pretty insane. Alright, well, I've been riding a few miles in road mode, and so far, yeah, it's pretty uneventful. Very smooth in road mode. I did want to try road mode just to get a feel for the bike, but I think we're going to switch it to dynamic here. It's really interesting. So they have the cylinders on each side sticking out. This is a boxer engine, meaning that the pistons are opposed to each other. Taking off from a stop is fairly easy. It does like a little bit more clutch pull than I'm used to, so you can't just like feather. You got to give it a little bit of gas here. But yeah, very smooth so far. I'm gonna switch it to dynamic mode here. I have my uncle following me on the Harley Road Glide. Yeah, dynamic feel. Wow. Yeah, that's definitely a difference there. Wow, this bike has so much torque. Holy cow, that's fun. I like that. Oh my goodness. So apparently this bike has 109 horsepower, around 75-80 pound-feet of torque. But yeah, a good amount of power for the size of bike we're riding here. I just don't know what gear I'm in. I don't know if it has a gear indicator. I don't see anything. Shifting into gears, it's not clunky, but it definitely feels pretty firm. So you get a good gear shift. You can really tell that you shifted gears. And the clutch pull is pretty easy. I really like the riding position here. I'm sitting almost straight up, but I'm pitched forward slightly. And so I do have a little bit of slack to relax my arms a bit. Wow, it's got so much torque. So much torque. And there's a lot of engine braking. When I let off the throttle at a high RPM, there's a ton of engine braking. I kind of like the engine braking on motorcycles. Helps you slow down without, like after a hard run, you can kind of just let off the gas without hitting the brakes and slow down pretty quickly. It revs up very quickly. The throttle response is very good with dynamic mode here. It's quick, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's too jerky. The stock exhaust sounds pretty good, not gonna lie. It's got a deep rumble to it. Yeah, so getting on the freeway and really opening it up all the way, this bike has tons of power. Just so much torque. I think you'd be satisfied with this amount of power. Like, it's definitely very quick, very fast bike. Alright, so we're in 6th gear here, and we're going 70 miles an hour, and I'm gonna roll on the throttle here. And we're almost doing 90, so yeah. I mean, it's got plenty of power even in 6th gear. You don't have to downshift. It feels pretty stable when you're accelerating. It does have a steering stabilizer up there. That kind of gives me a little bit of hope that I'm not going to induce a steering wobble. Alright, we're kind of stuck in traffic here. So I switched it to rain mode, and the throttle response is definitely a little bit less jumpy and less quick. The boxer engine is just pretty cool. When you're at low speeds and you pull in the clutch and rev it up, you can actually feel the torque of the engine move the bike side to side. Pretty cool. I've never ridden a boxer engine motorcycle before. Now, the one thing I don't like is that there's no RPM gauge on here. I would like an RPM gauge on a sport bike or a sporty bike of some sort. You don't really need it on a cruiser because you usually know when to shift, but I just have no idea when to shift on this bike. I don't know how high it revs just jumping on here. So I'm in rain mode and we're at speed now. And yeah, it's definitely tamed down a bit. It doesn't have that kickback that the dynamic mode and the road mode does. You can still get into trouble with rain mode, but in the rain this would be really nice, so you don't accidentally give it too much throttle for some reason. Yeah, just all around smoother in rain mode. I can roll on the throttle without it actually giving me tons of power. As you can see here, I'm barely rolling on the throttle and it's not really giving me much, so I do have to turn the throttle quite a bit more in rain mode. Oh yeah, dynamic, you feel the change instantly. It's very on and off. Still smooth, but you can feel the difference in the throttle instantly. I think if you've ridden any 600cc sport bike, you kind of know what to expect with this kind of power. Although it is a lot torqueier down low. We're going through some twisties here, and these aren't super tight twisties. These are kind of sweeping turns, but the bike is super fun through these twisty turns. It does take a little bit of counter steering, like more than I'm used to really lean it over, even at lower speeds. But it just has so much torque. It's fun in the corners. You can really exit a corner, and it feels really stable through the corners here. So is it a canyon carver? It can do it. Is it the best canyon carver I've ever ridden? No. But it is pretty fun to rip around, rip through the canyons here. Alright, so the road is a little rougher out here. I find myself preparing myself for these bigger dips. If I see a dip, I kind of lift my legs up and that's just because the rear suspension is fairly stiff, so the front seems to absorb it pretty well, but then you get the back suspension not cycling as much, and it's a little jarring on my back, although it isn't the firmest bike I've ever ridden, so it's not going to absolutely beat you up. But you know, at this point in the ride, I'm trying to use my body as a shock absorber almost, instead of just taking the full beating of those firm bumps. Alright, so we've been out riding around for about 2.5, maybe 3 hours so far, and I want to go over the BMW R nineT in summary. I'll probably put about 120 miles on this bike today, so I want to kind of just wrap up the video here with my thoughts about the bike. Let me just start by saying I really like this bike. I know I like a lot of bikes, but this bike is really fun to ride around. First of all, it's got a ton of power and torque, and the power band is pretty good. It seems like it's mostly in the mid to upper range of the RPM range there. Now there are quite a bit of vibrations in the handlebars, and so I've been riding this around for about 3 hours, and there's quite a bit of vibrations, so my hands are tingling once I get off the bike, so that's just something to consider. This bike is a lot more vibey than some of the 4 cylinders. The 4 cylinders are going to be a little bit smoother. Now in terms of handling, I mentioned this earlier, but it doesn't like to lean over as easily as you would expect. I do have to give it some push through some corners, and not just fast corners, but the slower corners. I noticed I do have to push it a little bit more. It doesn't feel like a heavy bike at all when you're at a stop. It feels pretty light actually. The suspension is pretty firm in the back, so I've been jarred around a little bit going over some bigger bumps. The front, I don't feel much through the front, so that's good. The suspension feels stiff enough to where it doesn't feel like it's loosey-goosey, and it feels great going around corners. It's very stable. I like that there's different power modes on this bike. I like driving in dynamic. Just gives you everything that you want all at once. And so I really like dynamic mode, and I would ride in dynamic mode probably 99% of the time if I own this bike. The seating position after, a few hours of riding, it's pretty comfortable. Although I don't like, well, I shouldn't say I don't like, but the seat is pretty firm after a while. Like, my butt is pretty numb already. I typically wouldn't buy a naked bike if I was planning to do any kind of highway riding or road trips. The naked bike is good for the street, but not having a windshield here is really crushing with the wind. The wind will beat you up. Alright, let's talk about what I don't like on this bike. There's not a ton I don't like, but I'll go over some nitpicky things. The handlebars vibrate quite a bit. There's a lot of vibrations. Some people might not like how much it vibrates, especially after, a long trip, a road trip. There is a lot of wind blast on here when you're going over 70, 75. So that's something to consider, but that's something to consider with any naked bike, really. And the seat isn't that comfortable for longer rides, so I'm not too happy with the seat. It's okay for 1 hour shorter rides in the city, but my butt is sore. I don't like that there's no tachometer on here. I really wish I could see the RPMs where I'm at, and there's no gear indicator on here, which is weird. They could have added a gear indicator pretty easily. But overall, what a great package from BMW. It's a fun bike to ride around, and if you've never ridden a BMW bike, then you're missing out.